What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price chart over here. We're going to talk about stablecoins a little bit because that's been a big topic out there in the crypto world with what's been going on with USDT slightly unpegged from $1, with the USDT supply coming down relatively quickly, and just see if we can kind of talk about it and try to make some logic out of what's happening over there in the stablecoin world. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by Linqto, private investing made simple, where accredited investors can invest in companies prior to them going IPO. They have plenty of companies to choose from in the private equity market, such as familiar names like Ripple, Linqto, Uphold, BitPay, Dapper Labs, and BlockFi, where early investors have the opportunity to get into these companies before they hit the public markets. Today, Linqto is running a promotion where you get $1,000 back in XRP for any purchases of Ripple. If you make multiple purchases, you can take advantage of the promotion multiple times. So that is good for today only over here on Linqto, where accredited investors can invest in companies prior to them going IPO. Today's a Ripple promo, multiple bonuses in XRP for multiple purchases in Ripple. You can check them out by visiting the affiliate link in the description of this video. First things first, we'll talk about Bitcoin. We've gone through a lot of topics over the last week talking about the 3-year channel that Bitcoin has been residing in and whether or not that can be a bottom for Bitcoin, even if just temporary. Or if Bitcoin's doing what it always does, where it heads down to the 200-week moving average, at least to the 200-week moving average, as we saw back in 2015 and in 2018. Or has the nightmare of this fractal returned back for Bitcoin? In the last few months of 2021 and heading into 2022, we were eerily following the similarities of the bear market fractal for Bitcoin in here, going out through the whole top and all the way back down till we started kind of deviating away from it in here. Bitcoin did hit its 200-day moving average, and ever since then has not been able to get back up. So which one's the choice? Are we back in the fractal? Or are we only heading down to the 200-week moving average? Or are we just going to stay within this channel for a little while? Now, bear markets are incredibly difficult to navigate. And my thought process has been that Bitcoin is in a bear market. But as we know, we've seen no retracement come in for Bitcoin at this point yet. So even in bear markets, Bitcoin can still come all the way up here and then finally start heading down to its next price levels. We get down here, extreme fear is in the cards right now. We know that the fear and greed index is at a 12. Yesterday, it was at an 8. We haven't seen an 8 since like 2020 or 2019. So massive fear out there. But figuring out structures of bear markets, quite a challenge. But still at this point, the long-term picture for Bitcoin still looks like a bear market. And everybody's pretty much in agreement that we are in a bear market right now. You can look over there on Twitter. All the big names do say we are in a bear market for Bitcoin at this point. Problem is, bear markets can be bouncy. They can be rangy and they can take a long time, or they can go really fast. Very difficult to navigate. But there's no question that Bitcoin's been given the signals of a bear market for a long time. And really the question is, is Bitcoin's situation far worse than a lot of people think on the longer time scale? So still, we don't have any retracements coming in here. But when you look at the much bigger picture of Bitcoin and you look at it, say, on the monthly time frame and the monthly indicators, is that the MACD crossed way back here in January, which we were talking about back then, that I don't think a lot of people were recognizing on the monthly time frame that this thing has rolled over on here. And you could see it still has a long ways to go down to get down to neutral. So for the longer term prospects of Bitcoin, even on a monthly time frame, it's pretty overheated. But on the shorter term time frame, we try to find some type of confluence to say it's got to go back into some kind of retracement and then it starts another leg down. Or do we follow the fractal and keep moving, or do we head to the 200-week moving average? It's a conflicting time out there, and that's been kind of the messaging all week, and I'll show you why. This is the current price action of Bitcoin that we have right now. This is the 2018 capitulation of Bitcoin when it had its first initial break below $6,000 and the structure it performed before it went on to the next level. And then this is the structure of what the ending of the 2020 C19 sell-off looked like. And as we can see in all of these circumstances, very, very similar for each of them. When the continuation of the capitulation occurred, where Bitcoin headed down to the 200-week moving average, we could see how similar it looked. And this was before it ever got to its 200-week moving average. But even when the bottom came in, it looked nearly identical. And in each circumstance in here, unable to get through kind of this final little blip right in here until it finally gave an answer. And so we don't have one right now on Bitcoin. So it's still a challenging time out there for Bitcoin and what's going to happen. One of the big worries out there in the market right now has to do with Tether. So I figure we'll talk about stable coins here for a little while because that's been kind of the talk of the town for the last week and a half after what happened with UST and what happened with Luna. And if you go out there on Twitter right now, you will certainly see things about the supply of Tether decreasing. And as you know, we've been talking about this every day, that the peg of Tether has still not reclaimed itself. It's still sitting there underneath the peg. It's very close, but it's still not there. So there's worry out there of what is happening over here. Why has this peg not restored itself? And I don't know the answers on that. I don't know the risks associated with that. What I do know is I have seen Tether act erratic in the past. Ever since I've been in the cryptocurrency market, I've seen erratic action over here on Tether. However, it has been very calm for the last year, And then what happened with UST, of course, puts everybody on edge, right? Because we can see that we haven't had Tether move away from its peg like this at all until recently, until once all this UST action happened in there. So UST, I wasn't in Luna, I wasn't in UST. It wasn't something I was following closely, but when I read all the articles out there and the people chiming in on what happened there is that, you had a correlation between the Luna token and UST, an attempt to be a stablecoin, but backed by a volatile asset. And so when Bitcoin went down, it caused a negative feedback loop to occur within UST and caused it to just spiral, right? We all know the story of how that ended up playing out, but whether or not it was ever even really a stable coin or not, or if it was just marketed as one, but that it was baked into the code between these two assets of UST and Luna of their supply increases happening. So of course that sent, how that all played out and how scary that all was and what happened there, of course that translates into the other stable coins of worrying about them. And the target of typical crypto fear comes into Tether. It's always been like that since the beginning of time, as far as I can remember in crypto. And we even had that same type of fear back in May of 2021. We had the USDT FUD. But we do have this situation here where there's this DPEG here and it's hard to explain what's happening. Then at the same time, we look over here at the supply of Tether, and we can see that the supply of Tether has decreased by about $9 billion in the last week. So that has the internet abuzz because we can go back and look over the course of the last year and a half. When have we seen a time where this much has happened? We haven't seen a decrease in supply like this since right before the capitulation happened back in 2018. And so seeing the supply decrease, we'll see a lot of FUD out there. And I don't know the validity of any of the FUD, but I can try to say what would make logical sense of why this would happen, right? If there's malicious things happening, if there's something under the belly of all of it happening, and everybody speculates, I just have no way to confirm whether any of that is true. But can I think of it of a logical perspective of why the Tether supply would be decreasing at this rapid of a rate? And one, I could say there would be an arbitrage play to happen in here for anybody who was able, any large pockets, large whales of the exchanges being able to scoop this up at these lower prices and then turn it into Tether and get $1 back in return, just kind of a quick flip. So there's an arbitrage opportunity there. But at the same time, we have a lot of fear of Tether right now. We have a lot of fear of stable coins right now after what happened with UST. Even though UST was a different animal of its own, there's a lot of fear of Tether because Tether is not back at its peg. So I don't participate in the DeFi space. I don't participate in the high interest yield farming, all that kind of stuff. But I suspect if there's anybody who is, they're a little concerned about Tether and what's happening in there. And we probably see not only arbitrage plays happening in here, but people walking away from Tether right now during this moment, removing it from staking, removing it from these high interest returns and getting rid of Tether because it's not repegged and it's concerning. And so what happens when this happens, if there's an arbitrage play to happen with the exchanges, they take the billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of USDT and they turn it into Tether and get $1 back for each USDT. Tether pays out from its reserves compensates the exchanges. Exchanges picked up a bunch of USDT at 95 cents. They turned it in for $1. They make a profit. But in addition, if all these people are getting rid of all this USDT on these exchanges, then these exchanges are sitting on big piles of USDT, and they've got to get rid of it. They don't need to sit there and hold on to all of this USDT. They go turn it into Tether. Tether compensates them back $1 per USDT. And when that happens, those tokens are burned. And so over the course of the last week, we've seen $9 billion be turned back into Tether and get burned. So they've had to pay out $9 billion from their reserves. Now the question comes on whether or not, if there's a huge run on this thing and it falls 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, will they have the reserves to be able to pay that out? Which we don't know the answer to. But what we can see that also kind of backs up the argument that people are leaving Tether to move into other stable coins, and that this isn't some type of like break in Tether, but more of a shift happening within the market as well, is what is happening over here with the other major stable coins. And that's going to be USDC and BUSD. So Binance USD and USD Circle. And that while USDT Tether has fallen by 9 billion in supply, both USDC and Binance USD collectively have risen by 5.3 billion during the exact same time. So there's likely a shift happening in the market at the same time while this is occurring. And there's people kind of worried about Tether due to this not being pegged right here, and after what happened with UST, to get out. So still concerning to see why that's happening in there. And I think we're seeing the market respond to that, why that's concerning. Now, what does that mean for crypto prices if something happened to USDT? We have no idea. And these are kind of like the logical explanations that I try to come up with. If you go over there on Twitter, you say, hey, it's a bank run that's happening over here on Tether. And so let's go down the idea of what a bank run would be, right? So essentially everybody's trying to go get their dollars back from Tether. They're turning in the USDT. And does it ever reach a point where so much tries to get turned back in and the assets that Tether has run out, and it turns out there's more Tether than there is assets? That's what the fear narrative is out there on Twitter, on that if enough people go try to turn in all of the Tether, there's not going to be enough dollars and enough reserves to be able to cover it. And in essence, that would lead to a collapse in Tether. And then everyone speculates with that narrative that would also lead to a collapse in the cryptocurrency market. So let's go look at it from a chart perspective to see if there's anything on charts that would say something like that. So we know the last time Tether took a big fall down was here in October, and in the early part of November back in 2018, we had a big move up in Tether supply and then a reduction in supply right in here back in November of 2018. What also happened in that moment in October and November of 2018 was this. The capitulation of Bitcoin happened back in this time. So one could argue that here we are in October and November of 2018, that the supply of Tether drastically decreased. They had to sell off some of their assets. That caused cryptocurrency prices to fall. And the problem I have with that argument, which I haven't seen this one before, I'm just kind of making it up on my own as we go to see the correlation between the last time we saw supply drop like this and what price action did shortly after, was that, the supply fell in 2018 and then crypto prices went as well. But the thing was, this was the break in the capitulation of Bitcoin down to the 200-week moving average, which is also what we had at the end of the bear market in 2014 and early 2015. So there was a confluence between these two corrections happening, that this was the typical depth of a Bitcoin bear market. And that from a percentage standpoint of the market cap of Bitcoin, both of these big major bear markets for Bitcoin both fell the exact same amount, both about 82, 83% for their bear markets. So typical moves down to the 200-week moving average for both circumstances. And in addition, as I presented my bear market thesis for Bitcoin, that this is the ending of a mega super cycle for Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin's third super cycle, is that we've done exactly this before. And that this whole thing has been one big mega super cycle starting back in January of 2015, in which we can see in here how even this correction that took place in here was of equal length, right? So this was a fractal that Bitcoin had been following, and it went the correct distance. So was it Tether that caused that? Or is this a normal size correction followed by the normal sized retrace and reaccumulation leading to a bull market? Again, I've seen a lot of people place this thing up in here, But my argument has always been that it's been back here and that this has been our normal size correction. So was the Tether supply decrease a precursor to what happened or non-related? Up to each person to decide. But we can see here that as the Tether supply is decreasing, the other major stablecoins supply is increasing. So an interesting time indeed. The reason we're talking about it is just because there's so much speculation out there on what's happening. And so presenting both sides of it, because it is odd to see that Tether is not repegged after doing so well for so long and having its peg stay for quite a long time. And right, we're looking at the Coinbase chart over here. We can see it's nicked $1 here multiple times today and yesterday, trying to get that repeg back over here on Coinbase. But if we look at places like Binance US and Kraken, it still isn't there yet. So interesting times indeed. Hard to know which way to lean on something like that. I try to kind of lean back on my logic of saying if Tether was some big, massive underlying issue that could destroy the cryptocurrency market and that was a risk out there, why would companies like FTX blow up to be so big where they're sponsors on every single umpire in Major League Baseball, or Crypto.com getting the Staples Center and all this money pouring in to grow this industry if that was the thing that could actually end up crumbling it all? So I kind of lean back on that, if that was truly some big, massive thing that could be the spiral of crypto, would these companies really pursue all of this, and Grayscale and all these companies pursue all of this if that was the underlying risk that could crumble it all? My logic just tells me it seems pretty unlikely that these companies would do all of this big stuff and that would be the thing that could crumble them. I don't know. That's kind of where my brain goes down. We'll do a quick little peek around the markets like we normally do real quick before we finish this video. The Dow Jones Industrial Average got a pretty decent rise yesterday. It actually ended up closing above the bottom of this level that started kind of the whole chaos last week, and even got to close above the daily candle close. But as we can see that we're starting out today, we're down 454 points over here on the Dow. Still nothing indicating that the stock market is turning over to the upside. Now, a lot of retail sales information has been coming out. Target, Walmart, the consumer is not doing well out there. So economic data isn't looking pretty out there right now. As for the US dollar currency index, we got that big push back down yesterday. It's just kind of been stalled out there at this moment. It is back below the high from 2016. So still keeping an eye on this thing, while the euro did end up getting a bounce off those lows. But the big watch, the big storyteller right now, I think there's a lot what's going on over here with Bitcoin and which direction we're going to end up going in right in here. We know extreme fear is at absolute max right now. We're hitting numbers in 8 on the fear and greed index is super, super fear. And I believe that's even more fear than we saw in C19. I believe we were hitting 9s and 10s in C19. So we hit an 8 yesterday. But a lot going on with Tether not quite being $1. Supply of Tether going down. 200-week moving average is still lower. The dreaded fractal takes it lower. But at the same time, we have very similar corrective structures of what happens after you break into a new all-time high, which we can see over here on the altcoin market cap. It's also what we showed happened to Bitcoin back in 2017 and Ethereum back in 2016. And Bitcoin's residing within a huge multi-year channel. So lots of conflicting things out there. And for me right now, it's fingernail biting and just waiting. But that story looks like it will be told pretty soon. And one other thing for Confluence too, I wanted to include, I saw this yesterday. I was like, I'm going to talk about it in my video because it's funny, whether or not it is funny or if it's actually confluence happening within the market. But like I showed earlier in the video, how, the super cycles for Bitcoin, that this has been this and that during the bear market, the prices would come back down into here to have a correlation with the fractals and the depths of how far the price could fall. I've showed this dozens of times on my YouTube channel, that this would be the area for the price to pull back to have a similar correction of depth and magnitude after we have, this would be like your 2018, 2019, 2020 bear market. Here's your 2020 and 2021 rise. That's what would have been this whole moment right back in here. And that this depth of a pull back down in here would actually get you right down here into these prices right in here. So I've showed the confluence of things that have happened in this market at the exact same time of Bitcoin hitting the bottom of that channel, the completion of that corrective structure that's happened in the altcoin market like we've seen in Ethereum and Bitcoin before, that the euro hit the bottom exact time on May 12th. But that we've talked about this so many times too. And what's real interesting is what happened over there with Grayscale is that exactly there on May 12th is precisely where the price of Grayscale ended up hitting. It actually ended up hitting that precise June top right in there. So the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, the pricing in this is different. There's complications to why that is different. But I found it so crazy to see that yesterday, that the exact level that we've been talking about for 8 months, 7 months, that's precisely what Grayscale hit on May 12th at the same time as the dollar, the same time as the same time as the euro, is the same time as Bitcoin hitting the bottom of that channel, altcoin market, XRP hitting the trend line, all these things, they all happened at the same time. So again, right, you look at the stock market and you say, that doesn't look good. Economic data doesn't look good. You look at Tether and you say, well, that's uncertainty in the market. Why is the peg not there? You look at the 200-week moving average, you look at the fractal that we followed for 6 months, all those things, negative. But at the exact same time, you have the opposite things that you could say, that the channel has been hit, that the corrective structure looks the same. So lots of conflicting things out here right now. And it's one of the times where it's real mixed out there. So all eyes on this, and we'll see how things go. And on that note, we'll start wrapping this thing up. Again, Linqto is running their promotion today for $1,000 back in XRP for any purchases made of Ripple shares for accredited investors. That is good for multiple orders. So if you do multiple orders, you can take advantage of that promotion multiple times. There's always a link to Linqto here in the description of my videos. And otherwise, I hope that you guys have a great day. So thank you so much for watching my channel. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.